The night sky over Earth was calm, stars shining like silver dust. People in the city walked home from work, children played, and the world seemed peaceful. But far above the atmosphere, something was moving, silent, and hidden. It was not a meteor, not a satellite, but a ship, an alien ship unlike anything Earth had ever seen. Inside the control rooms of Earth's defense agencies, alarms began to ring. Radars picked up the strange craft, its shape sharp like a blade and glowing with faint blue light. Scientists, generals, and world leaders quickly gathered, fearing invasion. For years, they had imagined what first contact would be, and now it was real. The ship did not fire weapons, nor send any message. It simply hovered, watching, waiting, as if it was looking for something. After hours of silence, a beam of light shot down from the vessel. On the ground, in the middle of a quiet field, a small figure appeared. Soldiers surrounded the figure, aiming rifles, ready for battle. But as the light faded, they were shocked by what they saw. It was not a monster, not a giant warrior, but the tiniest alien anyone could imagine. Barely 4 feet tall, her armor shining, her silver eyes glowing with strange energy. She held a small blade, curved and beautiful, and stood with pride. The soldiers were confused, whispering to each other, expecting an army, but finding only her. The alien lifted her chin and spoke in a voice that echoed in their minds, not their ears. "I am the warrior of the council, sent to serve," she declared. The soldiers asked, "Serve who? Serve what?" But she ignored them. Instead, her glowing eyes scanned the crowd, as if searching for one person. Then, without warning, she pointed her small blade toward a man standing at the edge. He was not a soldier, not a general, just an ordinary technician who had been called to check the landing site. Everyone turned to look at him, confused and suspicious. The man froze, unsure what he had done. The alien warrior lowered her weapon, walked straight to him, and knelt. In the same strange voice that spoke into their minds, she said, "You are my husband." The field fell silent, shock spreading among the humans. The man's name was Daniel, a simple worker with no history of war or power. He had never traveled far, never done anything great. Yet now, in front of soldiers, cameras, and leaders, a warrior from the stars was calling him her husband. Daniel's face turned pale, his hands shaking. "This must be a mistake," he whispered, but the alien shook her head. Her armor shimmered as she placed her small hand on his chest. "The council has chosen. I belong to you, and you belong to me," she said firmly. Soldiers tried to pull Daniel away, but the alien warrior stepped between them. Though small, her movements were swift, her presence powerful. She did not raise her blade, but energy sparked around her like lightning. The soldiers backed away, realizing she was dangerous even without fighting. The commanders whispered among themselves, fearing this was some kind of trick. Why would an alien council send their smallest warrior, and why bond her to a human man? Some thought it was a test, others thought it was a trap. But Daniel felt only fear, his life changing in a single moment. Reporters and news crews arrived quickly, broadcasting the event to the entire world. Billions of people watched as the tiny alien clung to Daniel's side, refusing to leave him. She spoke only a few words, but every word was clear in their minds. "I protect him, I fight for him, and I stay with him." The world debated what it meant. Leaders demanded answers. But the alien ship above Earth gave no message, only silence. The tiny warrior refused to explain further, repeating the same words. She had been sent, she had chosen, and now she belonged to Daniel. That night, Daniel sat alone in a guarded room, the alien beside him. He could not understand how his life had changed so suddenly. The warrior sat quietly, watching him, her silver eyes calm, yet unblinking. Finally, she spoke in a softer voice. "Do not fear. I will never leave you." Daniel wanted to protest, to tell her she had the wrong man. But deep inside, he felt something strange, something pulling at him, as if her words carried weight, as if the bond was real. He lay awake, wondering if this was the beginning of war or the start of something even greater. Outside, the alien ship continued to hover in the sky. Governments planned, armies prepared, and people prayed. But no one knew the truth. No one knew why the tiniest warrior had come. And no one knew why she called an ordinary man her husband. Daniel sat in the cold room, the walls lined with steel and the air heavy with silence. Across from him, the tiny alien warrior sat cross-legged on the floor, her armor gleaming faintly under the dim light. She seemed calm, almost peaceful, yet Daniel could feel the tension inside her. Every time a guard shifted outside the door, her silver eyes flicked toward the sound, sharp and alert. Daniel cleared his throat, trying to break the silence. "Why me?" he asked nervously. "Why call me your husband?" The warrior tilted her head, her voice echoing in his mind like a whisper. "Because the council chose, because I chose," she replied, her words simple but firm. Daniel rubbed his face, confused and frustrated. He was no soldier, no leader, just a man who repaired machines for a living. He had no idea why an alien warrior would be bonded to him. But she sat there, calm and unshaken, as if the answer was obvious. The door opened suddenly, and two generals entered, their faces stern. They ignored Daniel and focused on the alien, speaking slowly as if she were a child. "Why are you here? What is your mission? What do you want from Earth?" The warrior's gaze never softened, her tone steady. "My mission is him," she said, pointing at Daniel. "I protect him." The generals frowned, exchanging worried glances. "This is nonsense." One of them muttered, "She's hiding something." But when they pressed her for more answers, she grew silent. Her lips closed, her silver eyes glowing brighter, refusing to say more. That night, Daniel was allowed to leave under heavy guard. He thought he would finally be free, but the warrior followed closely behind. When they tried to separate her, she raised her hand, and the air vibrated with strange energy. The guard stepped back in fear, realizing she could destroy them if she wished. Daniel returned to his small apartment, never expecting to bring an alien guest. The warrior walked inside, examining everything with sharp curiosity. She touched the sofa, the table, the shelves, her small hands brushing over objects she had never seen. When she reached the family photos on the wall, she paused, staring at Daniel's late parents. "You lived without warriors to guard you," she whispered, almost to herself. Daniel frowned. "We don't live with warriors. We live with family. We protect each other." The alien turned, her eyes softening for the first time. "Then I will be family," she said. "I will protect you as family." Over the next days, strange things began to happen. Whenever the warrior stood close to Daniel, his headaches disappeared, his breathing felt easier, his strength seemed to grow. When he touched her hand by accident, sparks of light shimmered between their skin. It was not painful, but it felt like power, like some hidden energy connecting them. Scientists studied them secretly, whispering about genetic bonds and alien technology. Some feared she was changing him. Others believed she was unlocking something inside humans that had been sleeping. Daniel himself felt torn between fear and fascination. He had never asked for this, but part of him felt stronger, sharper, as if her presence was reshaping him. One evening, Daniel sat on the roof of his building, staring at the stars. The warrior joined him, sitting quietly beside him, her small figure wrapped in a cloak he had given her. "Why do you really call me your husband?" he asked again, his voice low. This time, she did not answer quickly. She looked up at the stars, her eyes reflecting distant worlds. "My people believe in bonds stronger than blood," she said slowly. "A warrior is sent to guard what must not be lost, not a city, not a planet, but a soul." She turned to him, her voice softer now. "When I touched your chest, I felt your soul. It called to mine. It chose me. And now I cannot leave you." Daniel's heart raced, his mind struggling to understand. It sounded impossible, like something from a story, yet her voice carried truth. He wanted to argue, But the memory of the sparks between them silenced him. Something deep inside whispered that she was not lying. Far above, the alien ship still hovered in silence. But Daniel noticed that every night, the warrior looked at it with unease. Finally, he asked, "Why don't you go back? Why stay here?" Her small hands clenched tightly, her silver eyes hardening. "Because if I go back, they will take me away, they will erase this bond," she said, her voice trembling with anger. Daniel realized then that she was not only protecting him, she was protecting herself. She had defied her counsel, and now Earth was caught in the middle of something far greater. As he sat beside her under the stars, he felt the weight of it. The tiniest alien warrior had chosen him, and whether he liked it or not, his life would never be ordinary again. Days passed, and the world watched closely. The alien warrior never left Daniel's side, her presence both a comfort and a mystery. Governments wanted to study her more, scientists begged to keep her in their labs, but she refused. She listened to no one except Daniel, and that made her even more dangerous in the eyes of leaders. Daniel tried to return to his normal life, but nothing felt normal anymore. Everywhere he went, cameras followed, reporters shouted questions, and soldiers stood guard. Through it all, the tiny warrior walked beside him, silent but alert. Her hand often rested on the hilt of her blade, a reminder that she was always ready. One morning, Daniel woke to find her in the small courtyard outside his apartment. She moved with grace, her blade flashing as she trained. Her small body spun, leaped, and struck invisible enemies with precision. The ground trembled faintly every time her blade cut through the air, leaving trails of light. Daniel watched from the doorway, amazed. She was so small, yet her strength was terrifying. When she noticed him, she stopped and lowered her weapon. "Your body is weak," she said calmly, "but your spirit has power. I must train you." Daniel laughed nervously. "I fix machines, not fight wars." But she stepped closer, her silver eyes unblinking. "If you fall, I fall. If you're strong, I'm stronger," she whispered. Daniel realized then that refusing her was impossible. The days turned into a routine. She trained him in balance, in breathing, in focus. At first, he stumbled, his hands shaking as he tried to mimic her movements. But slowly, he learned to stand firmer, to move with purpose. Sometimes, when her hand touched his, the same sparks of energy appeared. The scientists who secretly observed them called it a bond reaction. Daniel simply felt it as warmth, a strange fire in his chest that made him stronger. Even lifting heavy objects felt easier when she was near. But training was not the only thing she shared. At night, when the world was quiet, she spoke of her people. She told Daniel about the Great Council, a circle of rulers who commanded hundreds of worlds. Her voice grew heavy as she revealed their purpose. "They see Earth as a weak world," she said, her tone sharp. "They fear humans may one day rise and challenge their power. So they send me here to test you." Daniel's chest tightened. "Test us how?" She turned her gaze to the stars, her small hands trembling. "By binding me to you, they want to see if humans are worthy of alliance, or if you must be broken." Daniel struggled to breathe. The thought that all of humanity's fate rested on him made his head spin. "I didn't choose this," he whispered, but she shook her head. "No, but your soul called mine. The bond was real, not forced." Daniel sat in silence, realizing her words carried a deeper truth. Maybe the council had sent her as a test, but something greater had happened. Something they did not plan, something beyond their control. Her loyalty to him was not just duty, it was choice. One night, during their training, she stopped suddenly, her blade frozen in the air. Her silver eyes glowed brighter, her body trembling. "What's wrong?" Daniel asked quickly, stepping forward. "They are watching," she whispered, her voice trembling for the first time. She pointed to the sky where the alien ship still hovered. "They want me to obey, to report, but I refuse. I choose you," she said. Daniel felt a chill run through him. realizing she was not only defying her people, but also risking everything. If the council grew angry, they might send more than just one warrior. The days ahead grew heavier. Daniel felt the weight of every glance, every question, every whisper of the world around him. But beside him, the tiny warrior stood firm, her loyalty unshaken. She trained him harder, pushed him farther, and whispered in his ear at night, "You are not weak, you are chosen." Daniel began to feel something shift inside him. Not just strength in his body, but a fire in his heart. The fear that once consumed him slowly turned into resolve. If the council wanted to test him, he would not fail. But deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning. The tiny warrior was keeping secrets, secrets even she feared to speak. And while she trained him to be strong, Daniel began to wonder, was she preparing him for survival, or for a war that was already on its way? The days of uneasy peace did not last long. One night, as Daniel and the tiny warrior trained on the rooftop, the sky suddenly tore open with fire. Flashes of light streaked across the heavens, not from stars, but from ships entering Earth's atmosphere. Sirens screamed in the city below, and people ran in panic as shadows moved across the clouds. Daniel froze, his heart racing. "What is happening?" he shouted, but the warrior already knew. Her silver eyes narrowed, her small hands gripping her blade tightly. "They are not my people. They are raiders," she said, her voice sharp. "They come to test Earth's defenses." The first blast struck the outskirts of the city, shaking buildings. Windows shattered, cars flipped, and flames spread as the alien raiders descended. They were tall, armored creatures with insect-like limbs and glowing red eyes. Their weapons burned holes through walls as if they were made of paper. Daniel wanted to run, but the warrior stood firm, her tiny body glowing with power. "You must stay behind me," she ordered, her tone leaving no room for argument. Before Daniel could reply, 3 of the raiders landed on the rooftop, their weapons aimed directly at him. The warrior leaped forward, moving faster than Daniel's eyes could follow. Her blade flashed, slicing through one raider's weapon, sparks flying. With a twist, she knocked another off balance, her small frame striking with surprising force. The third lunged, but Daniel shouted without thinking, "Behind you." She spun instantly, her blade finding its mark, the raider collapsing in a burst of light. Daniel stared in shock, his chest heaving. She was so small, yet she fought with the fury of an entire army. Every movement was precise, every strike perfect, as if she had trained for centuries. Still, more raiders poured into the city, their screeches echoing through the night. The warrior turned to Daniel, her face serious. "You must move. If they capture you, Earth will lose everything," she said. Daniel swallowed hard, realizing he was not just a bystander, he was the target. But as she reached for his arm, another blast shook the rooftop, throwing them both to the ground. Daniel coughed, his ears ringing. When he looked up, he saw soldiers from Earth's defense forces rushing into the streets below. They fired their weapons at the raiders, but the alien armor was too strong. Panic spread as human weapons seemed powerless against the invasion. The warrior pulled Daniel to his feet, her silver eyes blazing with fury. "Your people are brave, but they are unprepared," she said, her voice trembling with rage. Then she raised her blade high, and for the first time, Daniel saw her release her full power. A wave of light burst from her, slamming into the raiders with crushing force. The creatures stumbled, their armor cracking, their weapons failing. Earth's soldiers stared in disbelief, realizing the tiny warrior was stronger than all their weapons combined. But she ignored them, her eyes only on Daniel. "You see now why I cannot leave your side," she whispered. "They will always come for you." Daniel felt his knees weaken. He never wanted this, never asked to be important, but now his life carried a weight he could not escape. Every attack was not random. It was directed at him, at the bond he shared with her. And yet, he could not deny the strange fire inside him, the power that grew stronger whenever she stood near. The battle raged on for hours, the city trembling under fire and smoke. At last, the raiders retreated, their ships vanishing back into the night sky. Earth had survived, but the cost was heavy, buildings destroyed, lives lost, fear spreading everywhere. And at the center of it all was Daniel, standing beside the tiny alien warrior who refused to let go of his hand. News spread across the world within minutes. Cameras captured the moment the warrior unleashed her light, the moment she called Daniel her husband before the battle began. Billions of people argued. Was she Earth's savior, or was she the reason danger had come at all? Governments demanded she be surrendered. Scientists demanded she be studied, but she stood firm. In private, Daniel confronted her, his voice shaking. "You knew this would happen, didn't you?" he said, "that they would come for me." The warrior lowered her gaze, her silver eyes dim with guilt. "Yes," she admitted softly. "I knew, and still I stayed, because I will not let them take you." Daniel clenched his fists, torn between anger and gratitude. She had brought danger, but she had also saved him, saved countless others. For the first time, he realized the truth. His life was no longer his own. He was bound to her war, to her destiny, whether he wanted it or not. That night, as the fires in the city still burned, Daniel sat with her on a rooftop again. The stars above seemed distant, cold, and silent. She sat close to him, her small frame trembling despite her strength. And in the quiet, she whispered, "This is only the beginning, my husband. The real war has yet to come." The city still smoldered from the raid, smoke rising like black scars against the night sky. Emergency crews rushed through the streets, carrying the wounded, while soldiers tried to hold back the curious crowds. News screens across the world replayed the same images. The tiny alien warrior standing beside Daniel, her blade glowing, her eyes fierce. Some called her Earth's guardian. Others whispered she was the reason Earth had been attacked. Daniel sat inside a dimly lit safe house, his hands shaking. He had not slept since the battle, his mind spinning with questions he could not answer. Across from him, the warrior sat still, her blade resting on her knees, her silver eyes reflecting the flickering light of a single lamp. She looked calm, but Daniel sensed the storm beneath her silence. Finally, he could no longer hold back. "You knew this was coming," he said quietly, his voice sharp with frustration. "You knew they would attack. You knew Earth would suffer, and you still chose me. Why?" The warrior's gaze lifted slowly, her voice soft but steady. "They were always going to come," she whispered. "The moment the council looked at Earth, its fate was sealed. My bond to you did not bring the danger. It only revealed it." Daniel shook his head, his fists clenching. "You talk in riddles. Tell me the truth, all of it." The warrior's eyes dimmed, shadows falling across her small face. At last, she set her blade aside and folded her hands, her voice carrying a heavy weight. "My people are divided. Some of them see humans as weak, a species to be conquered, controlled, or erased. But others, a smaller few, believe humanity carries something unique, something even the council fears." Daniel leaned forward, his chest tight. "What do they fear?" he asked, barely able to breathe. The warrior's silver eyes locked onto his, unblinking. "They fear your spirit, your will to rise, even when broken. They fear the strength of bonds you make, bonds not even death can break." Her words struck deep, echoing in Daniel's mind. He thought of his parents, of the people running through the streets, of the soldiers who fought even when their weapons failed. Humans had always been fragile, yet somehow they endured, they rebuilt, they survived. And now, it seemed that very strength had drawn the attention of powers beyond the stars. "The council sent me to you as a test," she continued. "They wanted to see if a human could carry the bond of a warrior, to see if he would break or endure." Daniel's throat felt dry, his heart pounding. "And if I fail," he whispered, afraid of the answer. "Then Earth fails," she said without hesitation. "The council will decide you are unworthy, and they will come, not with one warrior, not with raiders, but with fleets that will burn your world. Daniel felt his stomach twist, fear wrapping around him like ice. The weight of her words pressed down on him, heavy and suffocating. But then he saw her small hands trembling, her voice breaking for the first time. "I was not meant to choose," she admitted. "But when I touched you, I did not follow the council's will. I followed my own. I chose you, not them." Daniel blinked, his anger softening. "You defied them," he whispered, stunned. Her silver eyes shimmered with both fear and pride. "Yes," she said firmly, "I defied them because for the first time I felt something stronger than duty, stronger than fear. I felt your soul call mine." Daniel sat back, overwhelmed. He was just a man, ordinary, nothing special, yet she had chosen him over the will of a galactic council. The silence stretched, heavy with the weight of her confession. Outside, faint rumblings shook the city as more ships patrolled the skies. Human governments prepared for war, unaware that the true battle was far larger than they could imagine. Daniel realized that Earth was not simply under attack. Earth was being judged. That night, as the warrior sat watch beside him, Daniel stared at the ceiling, sleepless. Every word she spoke replayed in his mind. Test, council, fleets, failure. He felt the fire inside him again, that strange energy that sparked whenever she was near. It grew stronger now, burning brighter, as if her truth had awakened something inside him. He turned his head, watching her silver eyes, scanning the shadows with unbreakable focus. She was so small, yet she carried the weight of worlds. And now, she had placed that weight onto him, onto humanity itself. Daniel closed his eyes, whispering to himself, "If they want to test us, then we will not fail." The tiny warrior glanced at him, her lips curving into the faintest smile. She leaned closer, her voice a whisper carried on the silence. "Then prepare yourself, my husband, because the test has only begun." The weeks that followed were filled with tension. Across Earth, armies trained harder, weapons were prepared, and cities braced for more attacks. But Daniel knew in his heart that nothing humans built could compare to what was coming. The council would not stay silent forever. Their judgment was near. The tiny warrior stood beside him through every moment. She trained him until his body ached, his hands raw from holding practice blades. Yet she never let him give up, never allowed him to collapse. "You are not weak," she whispered each night. "You are chosen, and I will make you ready." Daniel's strength grew day by day, not only in his body, but in his spirit. The fear that once chained him slowly turned into resolve. He began to move with confidence, his strikes sharper, his focus stronger. Still, he knew he was no match for fleets, no match for armies that could burn planets. One night, the sky lit up brighter than ever before. Dozens of massive ships emerged from the stars, their dark hulls covering the heavens. People on Earth screamed, pointing to the sky as the council's fleet arrived. It was not a raid this time, it was an invasion. World leaders broadcast emergency messages, urging calm. But fear spread faster than words. Cities locked down, and soldiers flooded the streets. Daniel stood on the rooftop with the warrior, watching the ships descend. Her silver eyes burned with fury, her small body tense like a drawn bow. "They have come," she said, her voice sharp. Daniel swallowed, his chest heavy. "To destroy us," he whispered. The warrior shook her head, her blade glowing faintly. "No, not yet. They come to demand surrender, to test your spirit, to see if you kneel." As if on cue, a booming voice echoed across the skies, translated into every human tongue. "People of Earth, your world is under the authority of the Great Council. Surrender now, or be erased." The message repeated, spreading across every screen, every device, every heart filled with dread. But Daniel felt the fire inside him flare, pushing back against the fear. The warrior stepped forward, her blade raised. "They want me to bow, but I will not. My bond is to you, not them," she said, her voice trembling with defiance. Daniel looked at her, realizing the council was not only testing humanity, but testing her as well. If she betrayed them, she had already chosen her side. Earth's armies gathered, tanks rolling, jets streaking across the sky. But the council's ships hovered above like mountains, unshaken, unmovable. At the center of the chaos, Daniel stood with the warrior, surrounded by soldiers and cameras. All eyes were on them, waiting, hoping, fearing. A council envoy descended, a towering alien cloaked in golden armor. Its voice was cold, its words sharp. The bond was not meant to be honored. The human must be surrendered. The warrior must return to us. The warrior stepped in front of Daniel, her small frame unshakable. "No," she said, her voice echoing like thunder despite her size. "I belong to him. I protect him. I fight for him, and I will not return." The envoy's eyes narrowed, its hand raising, energy crackling. "You choose betrayal. Then both of you will fall," it hissed. Before Daniel could react, the battlefield erupted. Ships fired beams of light. Soldiers screamed. Explosions tore through the sky. Earth's armies fought bravely, but they were outmatched, their weapons barely scratching the council's shields. The air filled with smoke, fire, and despair. But in the middle of it, the warrior glowed brighter than ever. Her blade cut through alien soldiers like lightning, her movements faster than the eye could follow. Every time Daniel shouted her name, she seemed to grow stronger. Every time she looked at him, sparks of energy surged between them. Daniel felt it too, the fire burning inside him like never before. When she placed her hand on his chest, the energy spread, his body filling with light. For the first time, he felt the bond completely, power flowing from her into him. He moved beside her, striking, blocking, fighting, not as a soldier, but as her partner. The council's forces hesitated, their cold discipline shaken. Never before had a human and a warrior fought as one. Their bond glowed so brightly that even the enemies stumbled in fear. For the first time, Earth's people saw hope. Hours of battle stretched on, the skies torn apart. The fleet pressed harder, but the bond between Daniel and the warrior refused to break. Together they stood, together they fought, a human and the tiniest alien defying an empire. And as dawn broke, the fleet began to retreat, their pride wounded, their test unfinished. The world cheered, but Daniel's heart was heavy. He knew this was not victory, only survival. The council had seen their defiance, and they would not forgive it. But when he looked at the warrior, her small hand gripping his tightly, he felt the fire burn stronger than fear. "You see," she whispered, her voice soft but fierce. "They cannot break us, not as long as we stand together." The battlefield was quiet at last, the smoke of war rising slowly into the pale morning sky. Across the ruined city, people emerged from shelters, their eyes wide with both fear and wonder. They had seen the fleet of the council, they had witnessed the strength of their ships, but they had also seen something greater. A single tiny warrior, standing beside a human, had faced an empire and refused to kneel. Daniel stood among the ruins, his chest heaving, his body still trembling from the power he had felt. Beside him, the warrior leaned against her blade, her small frame weary but unbroken. Her silver eyes still burned, but now with warmth instead of fury. "You fought," she whispered, her voice soft. "You did not run. You stood with me." Daniel gave a tired laugh, shaking his head. "I didn't have much choice," he said, but deep inside he knew that was not true. He could have run, he could have surrendered, but he hadn't. The fire inside him had grown too strong, the bond too deep to deny. Around them, soldiers gathered, staring with awe and confusion. Some saluted Daniel as if he were one of their own. Others bowed slightly to the warrior. For the first time, humans did not see her as a threat or a stranger. They saw her as part of their fight, part of their future. That night, leaders from across the world spoke through broken signals. Some wanted to celebrate. Others wanted to prepare for the council's return. But all agreed on one thing. Humanity could no longer ignore the truth. Earth was no longer alone in the galaxy, and the galaxy would never ignore Earth again. In the quiet of the safe house, Daniel and the warriors sat together. The city outside still carried the scars of battle, yet in that room there was peace. Daniel looked at her, his voice low. "Will they come back?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. The warrior nodded slowly, her silver eyes reflecting the dim light. "Yes, they will come, stronger and angrier. They will not forgive my defiance. They will not forgive yours." Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Then what do we do?" he asked, his voice filled with both fear and resolve. She reached out, her small hand resting over his. "We prepare," she said firmly. "We grow stronger. We teach your people to fight. We show the council that Earth will never bow." Daniel felt her words sink deep into his heart. For the first time, the weight of destiny did not crush him. It lifted him. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between them only grew. Whenever she stood near, Daniel felt his strength rise, his focus sharpen, his spirit burn brighter. The people of Earth began to notice as well. Stories spread of the human and his tiny alien wife who had defied the stars. Children drew pictures of them. Soldiers trained with hope instead of despair. The world that had once feared the warrior now looked to her as a symbol. And though she still called Daniel her husband, he no longer flinched at the word. Somehow, it felt true, not in the way of marriage, but in the way of an unbreakable bond. One evening, Daniel and the warrior stood on the same rooftop where it had all begun. The city lights flickered below, the stars stretched endlessly above. She leaned against him, her small figure glowing faintly in the night. "They will come again," she whispered. "But when they do, we will not be alone. We will be ready." Daniel nodded, his eyes fixed on the horizon. For the first time in his life, he did not feel ordinary. He felt chosen, not by fate, not by the council, but by her. And that choice had given him something greater than fear. It had given him purpose. As the wind swept across the rooftop, carrying the smoke of battle away, Daniel smiled faintly. The tiniest warrior from the stars had called him her husband, and in doing so, she had bound their worlds together. The future was uncertain, the danger far from over, but one truth burned brighter than all others. Humanity was no longer alone, and as long as Daniel and his warriors stood together, no empire in the galaxy could ever truly conquer Earth.